I want to tell you about some of the people who call us, not after everything worked out, but before, because that's when it really matters. That's how things really come into focus. Now, let me give you an example. We had a construction worker who was working on a renovation project, and he fell from a scaffold, all right? And he got hurt significantly. And his employer told him that we're going to cover your medical bills and some of your wages with workers' compensation. And the employer said that, sorry, but that's all you can do. All right. And he was told by other people that, yeah, you're stuck with workers' compensation. Now, he had a significant issue. His maximum wage, I think, at the time for workers' compensation was $800 a week. Seems like a lot, except that he was making almost $2,000. And his medical bills were $200,000. Well, the medical bills were being paid, but he was only getting 1/3 of the wages that he was making. And that's it. I mean, workers' compensation is capped in the terms of how much lost wages you can get and for how long you get them. And so he was concerned about having a lifetime issue because of what happened to him. He didn't think he was going to be able to go back his job. He was making $2,000 a week, supporting his family. What do I do? What do I do when this all ends? Well, he came to us initially for his workers' compensation case. And then we spoke to him and said, well, you know, you as a construction worker, under the circumstances of your case, is entitled to bring a claim above and beyond what workers' compensation will pay. And we said, you know, you're already experiencing the consequences of the limitations of workers' compensation. And New York has a special law in place for people who work this hazardous construction work so that they can sue owners and general contractors for all of the injuries sustained in your laws, okay? Not just what workers' compensation pays. And it's a big difference, you know. You get all of your lost earnings paid, past and future, with no caps in terms of how long workers' compensation says we're going to pay, and that's it. You also get payment for your permanent injury and your pain and suffering. And if you have a life-changing injury and can't work anymore, those are significant numbers that in a comparable person, by the way, who could have a similar injury in another work situation who would not be entitled to this kind of claim and would be limited to workers' compensation. So the benefits of this statute for people who work at certain dangerous construction type jobs is incredibly significant. And it's unfortunate that others in this situation who are hurt on the job are restricted. And I've had many of those conversations with people who have had similar life-changing disabilities and are stuck with the limitations of workers' compensation. You know, workers' compensation can keep the lights on, but your personal injury case brings your future back in place. Give you another example, okay? We've got a car crash case, okay? Now, insurance companies know about these cases right away, all right? Because car accidents have been around a long time and they have a standard process that they deal with these. So our client got rear-ended at a light and she got a neck injury, which I can relate to. I had that happen to me, okay? But because she was, in the insurance company's words, not that hurt, they offered her a small amount, I think it was $8,500, and said, we don't really even think that you have a qualifying serious injury under New York's no-fault law. And so $8,500 is all we're going to offer, because you probably aren't even entitled to that, because as we have talked about in other podcasts, okay, that New York's law, and it's even been made more severe by this governor's tort reform this year, you have to have a qualifying serious injury in order to have a claim, regardless of how much the other party was at fault. It's sort of like workers' compensation. You're not limited to workers' compensation unless you were working on the job, but you're limited to no-fault coverage, which is even worse than workers' compensation, believe it or not. The limitations of no-fault are $50,000 maximum total of wages and medical benefits, and the most the wages are is $2,000 a month. That's not $2,000 a week, $2,000 a month, and a maximum of 3 years. So I don't know how that's even a fair trade-off, but that's the way the legislature and the governors have deemed it over the years, that you're trading off your right to sue for all your injuries for this very, very limited benefit. Okay, so having a qualified serious injury is incredibly important. Okay, and so when she came to our office under this scenario and said, "Hey, listen, this is what they offered me, but I'm having more and more problems." And so we sat down and we looked at her case. We looked at her medical treatment. We looked at what was going on. And we had her document what was going on. We had her go to the right specialist. And let me comment on this right now. You know, one of the problems with the system, and if you're hurt, you'll figure this out, okay? You get in a car crash and no fault's supposed to pay your bills, okay? The problem is that, okay, not everyone takes no fault. And so, why is that? Because the reimbursement rates are really very low, all right? So you may be interested in having a doctor who can help you out who may not take no fault. And the question is, will your private insurance pay if no fault won't? And these things can get to be very complicated, okay? So it's important that not only that you get treatment, that you get the right treatment for the right injury and you get the right diagnosis, so that then we can have an accurate picture of what your injury is, what its effect is on you, and how it's going to affect you in the future, so that we can then deal with these serious injury thresholds in a scientific, straightforward, provable manner. And that's why, whether it's the old law or the new restricted rules, you need to get the right treatment, the right diagnosis, and you need to document it. And even if there wasn't a lawsuit or a claim for injuries involved, it's still incredibly important that you get an accurate diagnosis dealing with what your actual problem is and making a determination exactly how this is going to affect you and what's the best way going forward for you to get better. As a personal note, I got rear-ended a long time ago now. So it's 10 years ago. I'm still getting acupuncture treatment for the injury to my neck. And that's how it keeps me going. You know, I do it and it keeps me going, and it's fabulous. But, you know, if I thought 10 years ago that this was still going to be the situation, I didn't. No, I didn't. And I'm somebody who deals with these all the time. So I can understand how most people don't think it's going to last, or don't want it to last, or don't want to deal with the medical system. But, you know, the bottom line is insurance companies count on you not knowing what to do and not knowing what your case is worth. And they count on you not dealing with how the system works. That's why when you come to see us, we have a system of our own that we help explain to you what we need to do as a team so that you can get the maximum award. And it's incredibly important in car accident cases. Another example. This is a sad story, okay? We had somebody come to us who was a warehouse employee who hurt his back lifting. And he filed for workers' compensation. And after years, he accepted a settlement offer without calling a lawyer. And there was two things here. He accepted a settlement with workers' compensation for his benefits so that they could get him off the books, so to speak. And that's something that, unless you really understand what you are agreeing to and what the consequences are, accepting a workers' compensation settlement is not a good idea, all right? But in addition, there could have been claims against the manufacturer of the equipment who was involved in his accident. But since 3 years had passed, there was no even need to investigate any of the circumstances surrounding his injury because it's too late, all right? And by the way, it doesn't hurt to ask, all right? Making significant decisions about your injuries without full information is, not a good idea. For instance, would you replace the engine in your car without getting good opinions that it was necessary? Or would you buy a house and do the closing yourself? Probably not on both of those. And so a 5-minute call or a 10-minute call to discuss what you should or shouldn't be doing. And that's not AI, by the way. And that's not your friends down the street. The information you should get is from somebody who deals with this, has been dealing with it. And maybe a summary from AI can point you in the right direction. Maybe it won't. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe it doesn't know all of the ins and outs in New York. Maybe it's telling you about California. Maybe it's telling you about Florida. But information, correct information, allows you to make decisions for critical life situations, okay? And you know what? You can make decisions based on information, and you can take the risk based on whatever you decide you are willing to undertake. But going forward without complete information or not understanding what the process is or what you're agreeing to is not in anyone's best interest but the person who's agreeing to give you whatever they're giving, because ignorance is not bliss. It might be blissful to the person who's making the arrangement on the other side. But the last thing in the world are what you want to do is call me with a story asking me, oh, what should I do? And the answer is, it's already too late. There's nothing we can do. And I get a lot of those calls, a lot of them. Very sad. And it's a situation that really is unnecessary. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Don't be afraid to say, I need to get a second opinion, because there's nothing more important than having knowledge before you make a decision. Before and after, be sure to tune in to some of the other That's the Law episodes, and to subscribe to the YouTube channel for more stories just like these. And we have great stories. And if you or someone you love is ever in a scenario like we've talked about here today, make your first call to Stanley Law. That's that 5 or 10 minutes of information that can be invaluable in helping you figure out what the next step is in your road to recovery.
Here at Stanley Law Offices, our approach is a little bit different than other law firms. Immediately when you call our firm, we're on it. The paralegal reviews the case with an attorney, we review the case, and then we see right then and there if this is something we can help you with or not.
Each case is different, so it's important to understand the nuances. Each person is different and they require different needs, so it's important to evaluate what those needs are, see if the client has any questions or concerns to ensure that they are addressed in a timely and efficient manner. Stanley Law, the maximum award people.